You are manifesting every second of your day, whether you believe it or not. Every opportunity, every conversation is being subconsciously manifested. Any belief, any thought in mind is power, and you are giving energy to anything you think about. Your day to day is a reflection of your subconscious mind. If you do not like your routine, you manifested it yourself. I'm trying to manifest a life where I am everything I believe I already am. And something I was saying the other day is my blessings are waiting for me to arrive. I'm not waiting for my blessings to arrive. There's a difference. You feel me? I'm meant to show up and go grab those keys for my new house. I'm meant to go grab those keys for my new car. They're waiting on me. And, I'm just working on becoming the person who is meant to attain those things. I believe in my mind that I already am everything that I'm supposed to be in this life. I believe that I'm the man who walks with confidence. I believe I am the man who stands tall. I believe that I'm the man who does the work that he wants to do. I am not afraid of, you know, anything getting in my way. I'm out of the procrastinator era. I'm letting go of my anxiety. You feel me? Fear does not serve me and my purpose, so why keep it in my life? If it's not serving you in this walk of life, let it go. There's so many things in life that we try to cling on to, and fear is one of them. This idea that we can't be who we want to be. You are not meant to suffer in life. Life is not meant to be this game of suffering. Life is meant to be this game of transformation. You can be anyone and anybody you put your mind to. If there's an identity that fits who you are at your core, you can identify as that. There's identification in everything we say. So if there isn't something that you believe about yourself, don't say it. You feel me? Be delusional in a way that speaks abundance to your life. Be open minded to the idea that life can play out in your favor. Be open minded that the universe works in your favor. Be open minded that God is willing to give you a new identity. Be open minded to these things. You can recreate your identity from the bottom up. If there's ever been a box that you were trapped in, or labeled as whatever it is, you can renew yourself. Life is not about being held hostage. And sometimes you'll meet people and they'll try and hold you hostage to a certain identity. People will be like, "Oh, you're changing. Oh, you've never been this," and they'll try and limit you to a certain expression, and they'll try to belittle you in the process of growing. And you can't let your environment dictate who you're trying to become. You can't let people, talk you back into bad habits. You can't let people talk you back into thinking small. Your subconscious mind is so delicate. Anything you say or do has the potential to manifest, new conversations or old conversations that keep you as the same person. So if you're not manifesting new conversations where people can speak light to who you're trying to become, or, show love to what you're trying to do as a person, then, you're probably not speaking good enough about yourself, and you're probably sitting in a very low vibration. You have to vibrate, so brightly that, opportunities just come to you. Like I said, my blessings are not, or I'm not waiting on my blessings. My blessings are waiting on me to show up. You feel me? I'm meant to walk through that door and pick up some keys. I'm meant to walk through that dealership and pick up my keys, because it's meant for me. It's waiting for me. I'm not waiting for it. So the beauty of manifestation is anything you want, any experience that you want to experience, it's already yours. And the human brain doesn't understand what happens in meditation and what happens in real life. So if you can see it in here, you can have it out here. You have to show up and you have to vibrate at the frequency that your dream life requires you to vibrate at. The timeline is different for everyone, but you need to be patient and you need to understand that your blessings are waiting on you. You are not waiting for your blessings. So the moment you decide to show up as the person you're meant to be, everything will come with ease. And I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't want all your blessings at once, because you need to learn what it is to live a good life without, wasting it on meaningless things. Be a humble person, live a humble life, be willing to help others, and life will show you exactly how beautiful it is. Treat everyone as equal, and be supportive of those who dream too. In a world where not a lot of people are ambitious about pursuing work that they actually love, you need to encourage others to do things that they're called for. Focus on your calling, and life will call on to you, and you'll see that things change drastically. So don't be rotted with this idea that you are stuck with who you currently are. Life is about transformation. You do not need to hold yourself in chains. You do not need to hold yourself hostage, and nor do you need to let other people hold you hostage. You can change, you can renew your mind, you can renew your beliefs, you can change your routine, you can change your body, you can change your aesthetic, you can change anything about yourself. If there's something you don't like about yourself, you can work from the ground up. You are capable of so much. And in life, we have been granted this amazing opportunity to live. Mathematically, the possibility of us being here and experiencing life is so small. And, we have such a unique opportunity to do whatever it is that we're called for. So I challenge you today to just focus on your work, focus on something that you feel called to. And if you don't know what that thing is, sit with yourself for a minute and see where your beliefs lie. Figure out what your program is, and get real about that. The beauty and self-love is really just disciplines and knowing who you are as a person and what you stand for and what you want to pursue. Don't get lost in these fake beliefs that society builds for us. Don't get lost in the ideas of uh, whoever you're around, your environment, whatever it may be. Don't be persuaded by small level of thinking. Think so big it scares people. Think so big that some people just misunderstand you, and there's beauty in that. I'm not really discouraged when someone says I think or dream too big, because it's my dream. You know what I mean? Like, it was placed on my plate, so I just see it and feel it, and am, if I'm being honest, I already feel like I've achieved all the things that I want to do in life, and it's just a matter of how things play out, and there's no attachment into how things happen. I don't think, or I'm not strict with the universe and how things need to play out. I've just spoken my truth, and I've said, hey, I want to do this thing, and I feel like this is what I'm called to, and the universe speaks back to me, you are worthy, and you are capable of fulfilling that mission. We don't need you to be perfect on this journey, we need you to be man. And me as a man, I fail all the time. I've probably tried a million times to pursue the things that I love, and nothing's going to be an overnight success, but to other people it might seem that way. But I've been showing up for as long as I can remember. There's been periods in my life where I was really out of shape, and just really in a bad state of mind, and no matter how much I fall or how many times I fall, I still get up, because I've been rooted with this belief that I'm somebody and that I'm meant for something. And I just dream really big. There's so many things that I want to do in life, and there's so many avenues of expression that I like going down, and I feel like I can deliver or portray some kind of message, and I want to share those things, and I want to be able to talk about those things. And I tell people all the time, speak about the things you see in your mind. Have courage to talk about those seeds that have been planted. Not only talk about those seeds that have been planted only in your mind, and watch them grow, water them every single day, and tell everybody everything anything in your life has just anything we use in life has once been a thought and then was something physical. So we don't need proof that you know thoughts can become materialistic items, or visual items. You you can take anything that you think of, and you can bring it to life, and it already has life. And if you speak on it and you pursue it, eventually you will create exactly what you're trying to do in life. And it's all about just showing up with that energy, showing up with that confidence that the work is already done. It just needs to play out in real time. And I want to remind you that any blessing you're waiting on is waiting on you to show up and do the work. So work on doing the work of the person you're trying to become, and not what that person receives. There's beauty in the journey, and I feel like the journey is what we really crave the most out of life. The story is what we hold close to our hearts. The materialistic items come and go, but I feel like the impact in which we can have on someone else's life, or in our loved one's life, is the most important thing. You've got to be willing to share not only resources but knowledge. You've got to be willing to speak your mind and stand in your beliefs. You can't um you gotta stick to your principles, and you gotta know what your program is. Life will unfold for you immediately as soon as you say you are ready. And this is me showing up. I've never really was comfortable in this life because I thought for so long that I couldn't show up and do this work. But now I feel more than called, and I feel very confident. I feel like things are playing out how they should play out, and I'm ready. I already done the work. It's just playing out in real time, and I get to do all the things that um, I get to work on all the things that I wanted to work on in the past. So I'm really grateful for this moment, and the direction that I'm taking, because I feel like I'm finally in control of the things that I want to work on. And I feel like when you start pursuing things you can control, like your own life, and how you run your program instead of what you can't control, like someone else's life and their program, things kind of like start flowing to you. So there's a lot of beauty in just focusing on yourself in a healthy way. The more love you pour into yourself is the more love you can give out. So I want you to remember that you are manifesting every second of your life. So if there's something that you want, and if there's something you want to change, I need you to think differently. I need you to affirm differently, so that things, conversations, environments can slowly start to change, and you start to, connect little dots, and you're like, huh, funny. Like once I started thinking this way, the people and the conversations started showing up, and then, it led to me being in new locations, and I got to feel different energy. And once you break that barrier in your mind where you think you can't do this, and you get exposed to it for the first time, and you actually engage with the vibration there, and you start to channel a different frequency, and that frequency opens new doors for different possibilities. So I want you to be open-minded to that. You are manifesting every day, every second, whether you believe it or not. So if there's something you want to change, it starts with you, not with the world changing. The world could change really quick for you, but if you were given everything you wanted today, you would probably be destructive with it. So, sometimes your blessings need to wait a little bit. Not necessarily you have to wait on your blessings, but your blessings have to wait on you to be capable of being a steward of your finances, and just being smart and intellectual with what you're meant to do with those resources. Resources create opportunity. Resources shouldn't create a downfall or a demise of you as a person. If resources create destruction in your life, you're not ready for what you deserve. So your blessings have to wait a little bit longer on you. So I encourage you to do the work today, so that you can see the fruits of your labor tomorrow. There's beauty in life. We are not meant to we are not meant to suffer as human beings. We are meant to come together, celebrate one another, and be resourceful amongst one another. There's beauty in sharing, and you know, we cannot take the things we attain in this life besides knowledge Nothing materialistically will come with us. So you've got to be willing to share while you're here. Make life enjoyable for someone else as enjoyable it is for you, and put faith back into people to dream even bigger. Sometimes people have lost the ability to dream, and I feel like, me personally, I want to just relight that flame, that vision, where people say, hey, you know what, maybe I can change, wait, maybe I can work on this idea or this business, whatever it is. I want to reinstall that ability in others, where they're like, wait a minute, you feel me, maybe I am capable of doing something. And you don't always need to know what that something is, but I feel like the most important thing is just having that belief. Something I was telling a friend the other day was, would you rather have 100 people believe in you, or 100 people believe in you and you don't believe in yourself? Or would you believe in yourself and have 100 people not believe in you? You know what I mean? So self-belief is very important. Be grounded in who you are as a person, and know your program so that you can know your life. And once you know your program, just be disciplined in that. The highest form of self-love is discipline. So if you know what you stand for, and you know what your morals are in life, and you know what your goals are, just be strict on that, and I promise you, one day life will change and unfold in such a beautiful way. And I affirm for you that that moment is right now. Once you start to think differently, things change. And once you respond differently to life, life responds differently to you.